Hi, and welcome to College Planning Untangled, where we help families simplify the college planning process. I'm Kristin Clark. I work with students, helping them to understand their career path and what college major and/or another educational path that they should take to get to those goals. And I'm here with Bobby Hood. Bobby is our SAT, ACT tutor, as well as MCAT, LSAT, and all the ATs.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I do help students with essays for college admissions and things like that, and help students sometimes with college admission stuff. Although my specialty is, most of the time I'm working on ACT and SAT and the other tests. So, all right. So today we've got something interesting, some new news to talk about, right? The Supreme Court last week came out with a ruling at the end of their term where they kind of finish up all their outstanding cases for the year. And their ruling was overturning the affirmative action system that's been in place for many, many years. And so a lot of people are confused and not sure what exactly this means and how this is going to affect college admissions. So just yet again, another thing that needs to be untangled, right?
Yes, for sure. Well, Bobby, talk to me a little bit and help our viewers also understand what does that mean?
Absolutely. So it sounds like something really huge when read in the news, and it may be, but the specific decision is that colleges that specifically consider race as a numerical factor in admissions decisions, that the Supreme Court's decision is that is no longer lawful. And so from my understanding, there are, I think, 13 colleges in the country that are directly affected by this, generally the most elite selective colleges. Harvard was one of the named parties in the decision. And basically, the decision is saying you can't use race as a sole numerical factor and say that if everything else is equal in an application, that you would consider race to
right
admissions decision.
So there aren't any now. You can't say because we have to have X amount of African Americans, we have to have X amount of Hispanics. That's taken out of the equation.
At least with respect to making a decision on an application that's in front of you, you cannot look at that as one of the factors as to whether the student is admitted or not. Right? It doesn't specifically say that you can't aim for. And it specifically says that the decisions does specifically say that you can aim for a racially diverse student body. And so the first thing that people might, when they hear this decision, they might think that this is going to suddenly change the enrollment ratios at lots of universities, and that suddenly that there's going to be a lot more students of one race and fewer of other races or things like that. That is unlikely to be the effect, but no one really knows what the effect's going to be, right?
Well, because Bobby, yeah. To that effect, what you're basically saying is, behind closed doors, not written on paper, not whatever, that could still be a discussion. It could still be talked about.
Yeah, that's part of it, right? Certainly that you could, right? Like it does say in the decision that it is okay for colleges to aim for a diverse student body, right? That they just have to look at other things, right? And they can't use it as a numerical factor. And so specifically, it did say, for instance, that if a student in their essay writes about the disadvantaged childhood they had or challenges that they faced and overcame specifically because of their race, that is completely fine to include in your essay. And it is completely fine for a college to take that into account. What they're saying not to do is to simply just look at everybody's race and multiply and say, okay, everybody of this race gets a 0.2 increase in their likelihood of admission or something like that. Instead, it has to be completely done individually on a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
And so the effect, so for instance, I think, like I said, only a certain number of colleges actually specifically said that they used it as a factor. But I think many, many colleges just use diversity as a factor. And so there are lots of ways to do it. There are lots of ways to achieve a diverse student body without specifically using numbers like that. You can consider, like the fact that a student speaks multiple languages as a positive factor educationally, right? That would tangentially bring that to effect. You can focus on admitting students from particular areas of the country, particular cities, particular neighborhoods, things like that. That's perfectly fine, right? So there are lots of ways to accomplish it. You can look at things like economic, like students' economic, situation and things like that. So anyway, the answer is like, colleges are going to have to change. Some colleges are going to have to change their calculations for doing admissions. One upshot is that for sure, like students who do have had challenges in their life of whatever type, now it is even more likely that will be helpful in your essay to talk about challenges you've had, whether it's economic or based on race or based on anything else about yourself, like that is specifically something that colleges are going to be considering, or that the elite colleges will be considering. And the main thing also to me is that all we can do when we apply for admissions is represent ourselves in the best way possible, right? And with these elite colleges, there is no such thing as anyone being a lock to get in, generally, right? People might say that legacy admissions, since still, Harvard still admits as much as a third of its student body considering legacy admissions. So whether your parents or grandparents or uncles or aunts went to the college still is a numerical factor in admissions, which is interesting, right? That still is admitted part of how they admit students. But beyond that, unless you are a legacy, the only thing you can do is represent yourself the best you can. And I think this doesn't, I don't think, make any direct effect on anyone being able to estimate anyone's chances of getting into anywhere, if that makes sense.
Right. So it's like people outside of the college admissions team don't think that you're gaming a system or whatever. It's just, it is what it is, right?
Absolutely. And so you can't say, oh, I'm more likely to get into this college than I was before. There's not any, it's just simply, I think something that has been going on for years is that there's been a trend for the past few years of students thinking that they were locks to get into colleges and finding out that they weren't.
Yeah.
That it's actually very competitive right now, right? Everything got a little mixed up post-COVID. You had a year where applications were down, and then you had a year where applications were way up. And the number of applications, there are still very limited spots for lots and lots of people applying. And so that's basically it. This is all just something that came out last week. So lots of information will come out soon, I think.
Bobby, do you follow Jack Salingo by any
No,
chance?
I don't.
No. So I'm going to put this in the feed because if anybody's going to be talking about this, I'm sure it's Jeff. And he has a newsletter called Next. I think that's the right thing, but it's in the feed. So anybody that really wants to dig into this, I'll be shocked if he's not talking about it in his newsletter.
Absolutely.
He's a great resource. I love listening to him because he's really tapped in across the country with all the colleges and has these conversations every stinking day. So
absolutely.
There's a resource for you.
That's great. And I think the main thing is like, there's not any exact specific answer to what this means. But it's only been a week. We'll know more about it. So if you're concerned about the effects on college admissions this fall, start looking at things like that, resources from actual educational consultants who know about the college admissions process. That's where you can get more news. And we'll probably revisit it if more information comes out.
Yeah, if it becomes a thing, right? Like something we need to be concerned about. How about, you said that there were a couple other things. What other things were talked about?
Other Supreme Court decisions, you mean? Or, there were other, another one that was last week, right at the end of the term, is that they overturned, or they said that the plan by the White House to forgive some student loan debt was unconstitutional. And so people who were told a couple of years ago that student loan debt was going to be forgiven, that is now not happening, which is distressing to a lot of people who thought that it had been announced that they were getting student loan debt forgiven.
It is, Bobby, but
Yeah.
okay, I'm gonna give my opinion on this one.
Sure.
And I don't have a super strong opinion. I'm high in harmony in my Clifton strengths.
Right.
So there are not many things that I have a very strong opinion on. But I got to tell you,
Mhm.
I scrimped and saved and put away
Sure.
money to have my kids be able to go to college. They had to go out and get merit scholarships and all the
Mhm.
things to help with that. And I kind of look at this and I go, I would have been upset
Mhm.
personally if that would have gotten passed because I was
Yeah.
like, well, hold on a minute. I mean, it was hard.
Yeah.
And everybody has at least the opportunity to go after scholarships and all the things. It's a matter of taking the time to do it. And I also think we all make choices.
Yeah.
And you got to look at the facts and go, okay, I'm going to college because here's what I'm gunning for. So I can spend the X to be able to
Yeah.
get. I know that's not a popular opinion on this amongst everybody, I guess I should say. Some people it is, but I would have been that I've been actually following that, which I don't
Yeah.
follow politics for a lot of
Right. Sure.
so I got to tell you, that makes me happy, quite
Yeah,
honestly.
I mean there's strong divides on this issue. I know that a lot of people I went to college with who had student loans. I was lucky to have a fairly low amount of student loans because I had scholarships. Uh, but I know many people from my age group, from our age group, like that. Student loans really took them years and years to pay off, but college costs skyrocketed since then. And I think there's this
It's
large group of
crazy.
millennials who
Yeah.
didn't who got their things refinanced at very high rates. And there are so many stories of students in their mid 30s, or adults in their mid 30s who have been paying on time, who've made their payments on time for every student loan payment that they've ever been requested to make, and they owe more money than they borrowed right now.
That is crazy. So if
Because of
we're
interest
going to do
rates getting
anything,
refinanced at crazy amounts and things like that.
so if
Yeah.
we're going to do anything, let's look at that.
Well,
Let's
that's
look
yeah,
at
that's what the plan was trying to do, is forgive, some parts of student loans that, for students who had, the original idea was, first was to forgive like $10,000 worth, to take a chunk out of it so that the interest payments wouldn't be unreasonably high, so that they could actually start paying down their debts instead of literally sitting there in their age 30s and saying, I literally have been making my payments and the debt's not going down. So that's part of what, it's not everybody's situation. And it is, you can always say, oh, well, you should have, been, paid more
but
attention when you
Bobby,
were refinancing and understood interest rates and things like
well,
that.
hold
But it's
on.
now that people are, the generation after us had to borrow, $300,000 to go to college, whereas when we were back then, you had to borrow $60,000 to go to
Well, and
college.
here's the deal. I worked through college and I paid for my way.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
So I get the going back in time.
Right.
Absolutely get that. It was
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah. You could pay
Paid
your
for
way through
college,
college back then. You can't do it now. Right.
waiting tables. Okay. Paid for it
You
all.
could do
Didn't
it
have
for
a loan.
community college. Yeah. So it's
No, 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 no. I want to go back to
yeah, go
this.
ahead. Uh-huh.
No, back in that day, I went to a state university, made that
Mhm.
choice, paid for the whole thing, didn't have a loan to my name. Okay.
Right.
You could do that. But let's fast forward. What I told you is I scrimped and saved for my kids that
Yeah.
did have to pay these high prices.
Yeah.
I still go back and I go, we're making choices here. But I think where I'm having the problem, Bobby,
Mhm.
is that people aren't sitting down and talking about what choice am I making?
Right.
They're just checking the box and going, well, I guess college is the next thing. Is it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think it really, what it does is it says, then quit just making these arbitrary, like, ooh, I'm going to go spend all this money. And I'm not saying everybody did. Let's do the disclaimer.
Right.
But I'm
Oh,
saying
yeah.
a lot of people do. And now we've got people out there with loans that don't even have a degree,
Yeah.
all these things. So it's
Mhm.
like, guys, then let's do a little bit more education on what are you really signing up for so that
Absolutely.
people can make a good decision on this and quit
Mhm.
just, and I go, gosh, there's so many things swimming in my head on this. I see so many families where they're taking out a loan for a kid, where a kid doesn't understand what they're signing up for.
Yeah.
And that's a problem.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So this is the huge thing, right? Because the generation that's aged 15 to 25 right now, they are noticing this because they are seeing the generation above them and very near to them talking about this and how student loans or whatever are exorbitant and killing them. And then, and you have a student loan and then COVID happens and all these things, right? And so they are changing their opinions. A lot of them, they're much more aware that for all these years since we were there, when we were in high school, straight up, society told us you must go to college or you are some sort of loser. And if you don't get to college, you're not going to be able to get any sort of job and you're not going to be able to succeed and all these things. And it was just a foregone conclusion that everyone should go, or that people who don't would be working menial sort of jobs. Then we've all seen many people that didn't go to college be very, very successful in all of their trades. And so now people are actually, and I think through social media and things like that, being able to get that information that we couldn't get and are able to fight against that message. And so I think now the message is getting spread. You see it a lot on TikTok and stuff of saying, hey, only go to college if you have a reason and know why and think about it and make that decision. And you're spreading that message too.
And I will tell you, Bobby, because I go out and speak about this stuff all the time. I'm like, go in educated, and not just about the money part. It's like, what are your goals? What are you trying to get accomplished? But I think and yes, I think more people are talking about it,
right?
But not nearly enough.
Oh, absolutely, right. I'm just saying it's out there, and it is more. It's more people are understanding.
It's more, but I will
but it
tell
is
you,
not near enough. But yeah, it is. It's a bad message to say every single person should go, especially if you don't know why you're going. It's better to take a year and figure out your strengths and what you want to do, and spend a year working and understanding how money works and stuff before you start committing to a thing that's going to give you a $2,000 a month loan payment or higher.
Well, and I'll tell you where we need to start this is in our high schools.
Yes.
And the area that I think that we really need to pay attention is these high schools that are in more of the affluent areas, because the message there is go to college, go to college, go to college, go to college, go to college.
Yes,
I mean,
absolutely.
You can't say it enough times.
Yep.
And because you and I, we work with these kids, right, that are heading to college. And it's like, you know what? They're blindly following that message because they're adults and they've treated them fairly well and told them good information. And they keep spouting this. And it's like, guys, let's give them their options. We've got to start. And we've got to start at the high school level. And I don't know if that goes into government. I don't, all I'm hearing from our schools is that, we're putting these kids into tracks. They're either going into a STEM track or they're going into a,
like the journalism track or
education, whatever those are. And I look at that and I go, I think that's absolutely wrong, Bobby. Because this would be the time in my mind where kids should explore every stinking thing they can.
Sure.
And if they love math, let them do all the math they want. Right? Let them do it. If they love science, my gosh, offer them every science thing they could ever take. But quit making them, by the way, they're starting in middle school.
That
they're putting them in these tracks.
The Texas track system. Starts in middle school.
But what's that promoting? That's promoting that, if you're in STEM, they're talking, they still talk
that you already know what your career is or whatever, right?
Yes. Yeah. So you can tell I'm passionate about this one.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, and that's the thing. Yeah. I mean, so that's part of the thing is like, we are both in the business of helping people get into college and do well in college, but yet we're both saying, hey, people need to be aware that not college is an option, right?
I'm going to change.
We're saying that,
I'm going to change that actually.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm really not in the business of getting kids into college. I'm in the business of helping them figure out what educational path they need to go down.
Right, and that could be many things, right?
Yeah.
There are many educational paths that aren't college, and not going to a 4-year university doesn't mean you're not going down an educational path, right? There are certifications. There are schools that are specific for different things. Absolutely, right? I mean, going to culinary school, that's an educational path, right?
Absolutely.
All of these things. And this is all it needs to start with finding out what your strengths are and what you're going to be good at. Absolutely. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I think these things are really important. I think really is that regardless of what the decision is about past student loans, we've got to change the way they are talked about today so that people in the future aren't put in that terrible situation, because otherwise history is just repeating itself and people are saddled with this
All
forever.
this debt. Yeah, that
Yeah.
just breaks my heart.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
okay. Well, cool. Thank
All
you
right.
for joining us on that. I
Yeah,
appreciate
this is a great discussion.
All right. So we will see you next week.
Absolutely. Have a great week.